So Koe Wetzel dropped his new album Hell Paso, and I want to talk about it. If you're new or unfamiliar with who Koe Wetzel is, if I had to summarize him as quickly as possible, I would describe him as the top dog of the Texas country rock scene. Over the last several years, as far as distinct musical trends based in a geographical spot, one of the most notable would have to be the Texas rock scene that is under the label of country and Texas country, but has formed its own side bubble as it has traveled further and further into the rock direction to the point where the subject of this video, Koe Wetzel, along with many other names like Colby Cooper, some would even throw Parker McCollum in there, have started to receive, honestly, a fair bit of criticism for still holding on to the country title. Just like how some people look at Dan and Shay and say, why do you call yourself country? This is unapologetically pop. It seems like lately it's been starting to push the other way as well, where people are taking a look and saying, hold on, you're just making rock music, so why aren't you calling it as it is? And if anything, it's just fueled the aggression, and I think it's pushed some people like Koe to almost lean into this role of a heel, going even further into the rock sound, and lyrically there seems to be a bit more edge as they approach their music with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. While I've never been the biggest fan of Koe Wetzel, I've for the most part appreciated what he's done. Listening through some of his older stuff and his more acclaimed work like Harold Saul High, it just never clicked with me stylistically. If you're a consistent viewer of the channel, you'll know I generally prefer lighter, folkier sounds, so naturally Koe's aggressive heavy rock style has never been my go-to. Although, like I said, I respect and appreciate from a critical point of view what he has built through his catalog. If you're into that sad boy dark rock style with almost a modern emo edge, I think Koe is a great starting point to get into that scene and a very fitting face of that world. But even critically, I didn't think his previous album Sellout from 2020 was his best showing at all. To me, it just read as a bit corny, almost like the criticism backed him into a corner and he was just firing back. Although it still had its moments like Drunk Driving, it just came off really bitter and I couldn't get behind it. Maybe I'm reading into it entirely wrong, but that's just how the album came off to me. So when he announced this new album, Hell Paso, I was obviously going to check it out, but I didn't go in thinking, oh, I'm going to review this. I better get through it as quickly as I can so I can formulate some thoughts. I was more curious than excited to just see what Koe has come up with after, like I said, what I thought was a decently disappointing album. But very quickly I became captivated by this album, and now after giving it just a few listens, I would easily call this Koe's best album to date. But what stands out to me personally is that not only do I appreciate the album, but I truly enjoy it as well from a stylistic point of view, which I never thought I would see that day. The album is 13 songs for a runtime of 38 minutes, with 3 of those songs being short little interludes of Koe speaking, or the closer, which fittingly titled To Be Continued, is this cut-off iPhone recording of what sounds like an unfinished song. Koe is no stranger to utilizing different interludes and transitions and opening scenes, but the ones on Hell Paso specifically, I think do the best job of setting the mood, staying brief, moving the album along, and keeping everything in frame. They're just short, little additions that contribute to the concept of the record and help break the album up a little while never getting in the way. And the result is a super smooth, well-paced album, which right away is a good thing. I think a well-paced album is setting itself up for success. It doesn't drag, it doesn't feel cut off or short, it doesn't feel misguided or directionless. Hell Paso feels refined, intentional, and well put together. But now to the actual music. Paired with what I would call easily some of Koe's most interesting and creative instrumentals, I just much prefer the attitude Koe brought forth on this record. It's not off-brand by any means. I mean, this album is depressing and heavy and at times straight up jarring, but I think those characteristics are all products of how vulnerable Koe gets. And I think that's what I like so much. He's not trying to be depressing, he's not trying to be heavy, he's not trying so hard to be explicit or jarring, he's just being incredibly transparent and vulnerable, and as a result, those attributes of his music come across much more natural and appealing. Like the song Cabo, which also appears to be one of the more popular songs so far. But to come to get the money. It is this super explicit, almost graphic depiction of his interactions with women as a touring rock star and how they only get with him for his money and access to drugs. The whole song paints such a vivid and ugly scene, but it's so well done. Reggaeton station playing too damn loud, senoritas passed out on the couch, wish I knew a little Espanol so I could tell these honeys to go. Now there's panties on the lampshade, mezcal bottle barely half drank, freaking out the flippin' housemaid, but everybody likes to get paid. There's just so much shame and disapproval, like even Koe knows it's not a good environment he's found himself in, but here he is. And that here he is where we find a lot of this album. At times it almost feels like Koe accepting defeat. Not necessarily embracing his dark or toxic lifestyle, but Rather, while maybe not being proud of it, he's just accepting it. Like the 7th track, So Low, which is quite literally Koe saying, I'm so low it's effing awesome, embracing the sadness and the pain, becoming glad there isn't a cure for insane, and you're listening to it and you have no choice but to sit and listen while he metaphorically just stares into your soul and tells you how his life has been looking lately. You can also look at songs like 3 Weeks, which is probably the most country song on the album, staying entirely acoustic, with some really pretty harmonica in the transitions that I absolutely love. But lyrically, the song is a ruthless and shockingly honest reflection on a pointless failing relationship, to the point where Koe says he misses coming home to this girl with another girl on his mind. He goes on to explain how bad the situation has gotten, saying his friends have to keep calling him to make sure he's okay, but he's singing it over such a pretty instrumental as if he just doesn't care or is trying to mock the situation as a whole. It gets to the point where even as a listener, it starts feeling borderline concerning, like, is the man doing okay? And obviously I hope he is, but I'm sure he has a circle of people around him, and especially releasing music this open and vulnerable, I'm sure he has the supports he needs. But man, does it ever make for an eye-opening listen, especially when it's this well put together, because like I said, on the musical side of things, I think it is the most enjoyable Koe Wetzel album to date. And I get that I might be biased towards Hell Paso because it's not as heavy rock as his other work, but that's why I like the album so much. The music just feels much more digestible, but there still are some louder moments like April Showers or Money Spent, but they don't feel overdone. I think there's a healthy balance of loud and quiet and weird and safe moments, and in pieces here and there, I think the louder moments become much more enjoyable because they aren't constantly being shoved down your throat. Some sonic standouts for me would include Creeps, which is this trippy, haunting soft rock song that uses a lot of chorus effects on the instruments, and some unsatisfying vocal sections that are so imperfect it's almost satisfying. As I mentioned earlier, I really do think Cabo is one of the most well-rounded songs on the album. There's some Hispanic flavors thrown into the mix, like those classical guitar lines that I think add so much spice to the verses. I also love how the bongos are implemented into the percussion. I also think it's one of the strongest songs melodically, and how Koe steps it up vocally in the back half. I really do think the world of that song, even though, like I said, it is quite the jarring listen, but that's the whole point. Like I said, I do love the super soft and pretty 3 Weeks with the harmonica. Yellowbush Road is the longest song on here, but boy is it ever worth the 5-minute runtime. It's so beefed up and dramatic, by far one of the fullest mixes on the album with the crashing drums and the blaring guitars, and it's this song about Koe making it in the music industry, but still just being this boy from Yellowbush Road, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because realistically, like, outside of Aaron Watson, who's the king of independent country, like, who but Koe Wetzel has risen to this level of fame, especially out of Texas, on their own? I also just love the closing line of that chorus. Well, I'm better than most, worse than others I'd say, and I'm way too blessed to bitch today. I think it especially works as one of the final songs on the record because it's Koe acknowledging, despite all of his problems he likes to complain about, as far as the social ladder goes, he doesn't have much to truly complain about. And it works because, like I said, this album isn't bitchy or complaining. It's honest and accepting, and for as broken as it is, very mature in a way. And I think the difference in maturity is blatant through the transitional moments like Cheers, which I actually love. It's a 56-second interlude with Koe pouring out some alcohol and making 3 cheers. One to the people who have loved the record so far, one to the people who have hated the record so far, and one to the people who complain and say he's a disgrace to country music. I love that awareness of the talk surrounding him, but how it doesn't drive him to go fire back and make some petty everyone hates me music. Instead, he turns around, makes an incredible record, and then gives a shout out to all of his haters. I love it. I think the only song I would cut from this album is Better Without You, which feels way too simple in just about every single way. The structure is super predictable, the instrumental feels pretty bare in comparison to the rest of the album, and lyrically it's just one of those like I'm doing better without you songs, but it doesn't really make a case for its worth. It kind of just feels like something a Koe Wetzel song generator would spit out to you. But outside of that one song, I really, really like this album. I know I've said that a lot already, but I was just caught off guard by how much I appreciated and enjoyed a Koe Wetzel album. I think Hell Paso is the real deal, from the seamless flow, the songwriting, the production, the attitude, the length. Koe really just nailed it. Rating-wise, I'm going to give this one a decent 8, think like an 8.3 out of 10. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys today. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this new Koe Wetzel album in the comments below. Love to get talking down there. If you enjoyed the video, a like really does help me out. If you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing for some more country music content. In the description, you can find links to my Instagram, Discord, podcast, and Patreon if you'd like to donate. And yeah, until next time, I hope you guys have a great day.